Welcome back to this already the final segment of today's Price of Business. I am your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. I tell you, it's great organizations out there should be your business, including the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And we're going to be talking a little bit about them here today. Chris Kidd, he's a regular contributor on The Price of Business. He's with Chris Kidd, KIDD.com. And Chris, I tell you, we're always talking about Christian values and the importance that they play in business and the role that they play. And I love seeing them in every single aspect of our lives, and certainly in the arena of sports. And so I'm delighted that we're doing this story. Before we talk to our guest, though, tell us about Chris Kidd and chriskidd.com, your website, what you guys are doing over there.
Well, chriskidd.com is my website. I'm a financial coach. I basically teach people how to, make smarter money decisions, how to handle their money in better ways if they have kind of had some issues with it, and how to become better investors. That's kind of the short version of it.
How to make peace with your money, basically.
There you go.
And then tell us about Eric Anderson and Houston Fellowship of Christian Athletes. So actually, let him talk about that. But talk a little bit about Eric Anderson. He is the director of the Greater Houston Area Fellowship of Christian Athletes.
Yeah, well, I definitely, I think Eric can tell us a little more about it. But yeah, you basically said it. He's the director of the Houston FCA, and I remember being in the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, when I was playing, growing up and everything. We'll let Eric tell us a little bit more about it and kind of how he got involved and stuff. Welcome, Eric.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Glad to have you on, Eric. Kind of start with the elevator speech, if you will, for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes.
Well, we have a simple but powerful vision, and that's to see the world impacted by the influence of coaches and athletes. FCA has been in existence for over 60 years, and I was impacted by FCA as a student athlete, whether it was at Humble High School or in college. I played football at Sam Houston State. So outside of my father, it was coaches that made a huge impact on my life, and I am who I am today because of coaches.
Mm-hmm. No question about it. Chris?
Well, I guess, and you kind of answered it, but how did you, first get involved with FCA and everything?
Well, it's a neat story. While playing football at Sam Houston State, my parents couldn't afford to send me money one week. I probably should say the money they sent me, I probably spent it on something else. So let's say this night I didn't have any money. I was broke. My parents couldn't send me any money. And I'm walking in the student center, and I see a sign on the door that says Fellowship of Christian Athletes, Pizza Night. And I went in, and they met a physical need that turned into meeting a spiritual need. So that was my first introduction into the Fellowship of Christian Athletes as a college student.
Had you heard of it before as far as like when you were playing in high school, or was that your first exposure whatsoever?
Well, I heard of it in high school, but it was failure on my part. I did not get up early enough to attend the campus ministry huddles, so I missed an opportunity to be impacted by FCA at an early age.
Talk a little bit about the impact and the footprint it has in the Houston area.
Currently, we're on 278 campuses throughout the city of Houston. That's middle school campuses, high school campuses, and college campuses. We have full-time staff on campus at U of H, Rice. We have an impact at HBU. We're now making an impact on the campus of Prairie View A&M. We have an impact on San Jack, the south location.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, how far does that extend?
Well, we start as far as Livingston, that's north, south, all the way to Meadville. If you go back west, we go to Katy, and just beyond Katy, and back east, we extend all the way to the Galveston area.
Wow. Interesting. Wow. Yeah, so talk a little bit about, I know that you have a lot of former athletes and former professional athletes as well as coaches in the greater Houston area. Talk about the former professional athletes that are members of FCA here in the Houston area.
Well, recently we formed a great partnership with people like Lance Berkman, Andy Pettit, Bruce Matthews, and Case Keenum. And I can talk all day about Case Keenum. Case Keenum is very well-balanced spiritually. He's a great man, and his dad is one of our directors in Abilene. So Case grew up in FCA. He understands the history and the impact of the ministry, and he partnered with us to host a FCA celebrity golf tournament. And then he makes himself available to speak at various campuses throughout the city of Houston. So those are 4 athletes who are taking a prominent position within Greater Houston FCA to expand their influence across the city.
Awesome. We got to get all of those on the show. Can you help arrange that?
Hopefully.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, it'd be a great way of getting reach, and I'm fans of all those guys. Chris?
Well, Eric, when did you come on board as far as working with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, not just being involved as a player, but actually on staff and everything?
Well, I've been on staff for 11 years. For the first 6 years, I served as the East Houston director. In the last 5 years, I've served as the Greater Houston director. Neat story. I was looking for full-time ministry opportunity. I'm employed by the YMCA of Greater Houston at that time. I go into the gym to work out. I meet a guy who played football with me in high school. He served on the board. One thing led to another. The next day I had an interview with FCA.
Wow. Man, that's incredible how turn of events. That sounds like a God incident.
It was definitely a God incident.
Gotta love that. Talk a little bit about, what kind of things you do with your retired professional athletes. Do you have special events that include them?
Yes, sir. We have various opportunities for them to come out and make an impact as a speaker. One example would be last night we hosted what we call Fields of Faith, and this is a ministry opportunity that we invite middle school students, high school students, and college students to a field at a local school to have them come out and share their scripture, just share how FCA has impacted their life. But bigger than that, it's an opportunity for them just to share what it means to be a Christian. So we give athletes an opportunity to come out and speak. So last night we had 14 different fields of faith across the city of Houston, and we had a few athletes at a couple of fields last night.
Well, Eric, we're coming in pretty close to running out of time, but real quick, give me one of your favorite stories as far as being things that you've seen within the FCA.
And you got about a minute, literally.
Well, one of my favorite stories, I'm at North Shore Middle School. I walk in, the principal called me to his office. We sit down and talk about a student. I go into the FCA campus ministry, and we call it a huddle. I go into the huddle, and that student is there. And she comes up and cries to me and said her dad was just being released from prison. He had been shot 7 times. He was paralyzed. Her mother had just committed suicide. She was living with her grandparents. And she said, Eric, FCA is the only church that I know. And it's because of coaches and people like you and professional athletes. That's the reason why I come to FCA. So that's one of my favorite stories, to know that we can make an impact on a middle school student who her personal life is totally out of whack, but she can come and be encouraged at a middle school through FCA.
I love that story, and I encourage people to learn more about FCA by going to HoustonFCA.org and check out Chris Kidd at chriskidd.com. Gentlemen, thanks to both of you.
Thank you for having me on.
All right, it was a great segment, and I think we're going to have some more FCA stories in the weeks to come.
Sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be following up with you, Eric. We need to all three of us need to get together for lunch and chat.
That would be great.
All right. When we come back, we're going to have much more for you on tomorrow's program. Do want to remind you, actually, that would be Monday's program. Do want to remind you the show continues 24/7, though, at priceofbusiness.com. Have a great rest of your day and spend it right here on this station.